Hello, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug Show. This is the live version here on YouTube, and we do these each week. Today I'm a couple days late. I usually do them on Tuesday, but it's Thursday today. Just got a little busy, recorded a bunch of episodes for my other show. Please let me know in the chat if you could hear me. It's always good to double check and confirm that. It looks like it's working. Today we're going to talk about sort of two areas. One, are niche and authority sites dead now in 2024? I interviewed and chatted with my friend Pete McPherson over at Do You Even Blog a few weeks ago. And both of us came away with the thought that blogging is dead, in air quotes. It's not completely dead, but per my definition, things have changed dramatically in the blogging world from the last 3 years, the last 5. If you look back 10 years ago, it was much different. And you could see this on certain blogs where maybe a lot of the conversation was there, right there on the blog, right there on the blog post in the comments. And there was kind of a community there. And now a lot of that conversation has shifted somewhere else. So just from that aspect, things have changed, and we can't ignore, right? We're watching on YouTube right now. I watch a ton of YouTube. A lot of content and creators have moved to different formats, whether it's social media, whether it's YouTube, whether it's podcasting, but a lot of the content has moved away from the written word and blogs to somewhere else. Even the written word might be over on Instagram or some other platform that I don't use, but somewhere where it's essentially a micro blogging platform, maybe Twitter, X, right? So we have Steven on. What's going on? Jill lets us know that you could say or that you could hear me. Yeah, so thanks, folks, and our friend Jonathan as well. Good to see you, buddy. And we're going to talk a little bit today about some of my observations from the content website world. As a definition, we'll just say like content websites, niche websites, authority sites, all kind of the same thing. You publish content, you hope you get traffic from Google SEO, and then you earn money either from affiliate revenue or from ad revenue, or maybe you sell your own digital products. But the advertising and affiliate revenue is kind of the main area to earn money. And things have just been changing so much. One thing that I have said for years, and luckily there's several videos, there's many videos, I've said this dozens of times, but I always encouraged people to start a niche site just to try it out, because you're going to build a bunch of skills. So that's the second part of the conversation today. What can you do with the skills that you've learned from niche sites and SEO? And there's some caveats in here, but what can you do with those to use somewhere else? And the thing is, if you have learned how to build a site and get some traffic, and things are different nowadays than they were 3 or 5 or 10 years ago, you can take those skills. Maybe you're good at some of them, maybe you really like some of them, and you could focus on those and use those to earn money somewhere else. So are these sites dead? No, not exactly. They're not exactly dead. And the thing is, we still see examples of sites that are earning. And I posed this question over on I think it's the community tab of my channel. And if you take a look over there, which I think I can actually share my screen if I could find that area of the website. Give me a second, folks, and thanks everyone that's hopping on. Be sure, by the way, if you want to make sure that you don't miss these, you can sign up for notifications. You join the email list, and then I send out a note when I do these live streams, so you stay aware. Let me try to share my screen. We'll see how it's going to work here. Perfect. It's what I expected. So we had a few comments here, and I'm gonna give some shout outs to folks because they commented And I asked, like, hey, your niche site's dead. Like, what do you want to cover? And we'll start at the beginning here. So K-Rod says, yep, I think niche authority sites are dying, if not dead. I've faced the same problem where I've worked with sites for the last 6 years and developed some skills in creating content, link building, and SEO. So those are 3 skills that you can use out there. And K-Rod says, my site was hit by HCU and lost 90% of the traffic since last year. And with the traffic, the income also went down. So I am not optimistic to start a new site when the writing is clearly on the wall and Google doesn't like such sites. So he goes on a little bit more and he says the question would be if there's some way to use the skills acquired from building sites and repurpose it for something else, which of course is exactly what we're talking about today. Peak says, it depends on the definition. So if a niche site is a synonym for content produced by someone not experienced in the topic, rich in keywords where the actual users are an afterthought, then the answer is yes, the sites are dead. But websites with carefully crafted content by people who love the topic still have a place. And in Just, he says, where else would Google get all its knowledge from, or AI get all its knowledge from? Gaurav says, I have been in SEO since 2014 and I have seen the upside of SEO and now I am seeing the downside. I believe SEO is currently very hard for newcomers. I am trying to switch my earning source from SEO to AI and machine learning. It's so depressing to see Google SGE giving all the answers to queries and most of the users don't need to click to the website. So we'll keep going here. We got a couple more, but I'll take a quick pause and say hello to folks because we have David on here. Good to see you, David. Thanks for hopping on. And then Yuhara says, hey, Doug, I'm here to hear. No, it's not dead. So I need some positivity this year after the helpful content update killed it. And Jonathan says you can still have a niche site using Pinterest to drive traffic for sure. And Novit is on. Cool. So yeah, a couple quick notes. Yuhara, I think you hopped on a little bit later, but I think in some aspect, right, like these sites are different than it used to be. And there are stories and there are even success stories where someone started a site in the last year or two and they are doing well. A lot of the success stories that I've seen more recently are about sites that were started like several years ago and they have a lot more history and links and content and social and all that kind of stuff going on. So it's really hard to point those out as success stories of something that you can do right now. And one thing that I definitely want to point out is I have been doing more interviews. They have not gone live yet. I literally just finished one earlier with Denise. I did an interview with a woman named Kristen yesterday, and both were hit by the helpful content update. And I mean, it's devastating. They both had really good sites, and one person is thinking like, hey, how am I going to pivot? And the other person is thinking, I need to try to recover this. It was a lot of revenue, but the point is things are so different than they were that starting a brand new site, like I don't know what someone would be signing up for at this point. It could take a little bit longer. It could be harder than it used to be, and it was already taking a little bit longer. But the difference from say 2 to 3 years ago to now is dramatic. We have AI. AI has improved so that the quality coming out of like the AI tools, there's so many of them now, by the way. The AI content is so much better that it's actually ranking pretty well and sometimes displacing the sites that have originally written firsthand experience, which blows my mind. and it's really unclear what is working. I got an email today. I'm on several email lists. I got an email today, and this newsletter was highlighting a specific website that I think they're selling it. I'm not quite sure, right? I think they're selling it or something. So they highlighted a website and they're like, oh, it wasn't hit by the helpful content update. And they highlighted the reasons why it wasn't hit. And I think it was total bullshit, because they said, oh, it was high quality content with firsthand experience and original images and maybe 2 other things. But basically you could find plenty of examples where I like personally know people that have like a travel website, and they literally wrote the article themselves. They went to the place. It's highly accurate. They ranked for years. It's good content. And they are now displaced by Reddit, Quora, some other stuff that really don't have as good of content at the end of the day. So if you see these examples and someone is definitively stating like, here's why this site didn't get hit, I don't buy it, right? I don't think they're necessarily malicious in communicating that, but they potentially have their own incentives that make it really easy for them to tell that story and to have that delusion that that's why. And the thing is, if we can't look, and I'm not going to do this study, by the way, or research, but if you can't look and find like a very strong trend and correlation to prove that, it is just random. And this is something that I really want to ask some high level SEOs and agencies. I wonder how much luck they think is out there, how much randomness is actually out there in the algorithm. Because when you look at the SERPs, and if all the content is pretty much the same quality, let's say the top 25% of a given topic area, all the content is pretty good from that top 25% up. Google can shake all those up and basically have the same quality results for the searcher. And the visitor on the website gets the info that they need. Again, like we're saying, the top 25%, that could be hundreds of websites that have that information. And it really doesn't matter because it's kind of derivative. All the content is pretty much the same. Yeah, it boggles my mind. So I'm not really sure, when people send out those emails, I'm like, I don't know if you could draw that conclusion if we could prove it, if it's like a 50-50 split. I'm curious, y'all in the chat here, let me know what you think. And I'll hop back. Novit says, my site lost 90% of its traffic. I used to be very optimistic about this business model, but nowadays I don't even recommend people get into the business. Susan says, how dead on a scale from 1 to 10? 1 to 10, with 0 being dead because 0 means nothing. I would say really putting me on the spot. This is going to be an unhelpful answer. I would say 4.5. So there still could be certain niches where people really want to find the content. They want to read it. They don't want to watch a video. They don't want to listen to a podcast. My wife, for example, she doesn't listen to podcasts, and she's not interested in watching videos. And she's literally, like, I've sent her clips on YouTube, like, hey, you were asking about this thing. I found this content that's pretty good. And she doesn't want to watch the video. Like, sometimes you have to watch the video, right? But she just wants to read a blog post. She doesn't want to have someone ramble on and, just be on YouTube, right? So I think 4.5. And Susan, here's the thing. I believe that if you have a full content platform, maybe a multi-platform content plan. Maybe that's a better way to say it. So multi-platform, then a blog can be a great way to complement the full brand. Maybe that's the right word. So for example, it'd be great to have blog content to support your YouTube channel. Or maybe it's primarily a blog, but you have YouTube content to help support it. Or let's say you have a podcast. So this is what I talk about all the time. Podcast, YouTube, email list, and have the blog, right? Because you do need a blog to send people to a place, a landing page to sign up for your email list. It's good to have like a lead magnet there or some other content where they could learn a little bit more about your business or how you might be able to help them, or the niche site or whatever it might be. And the other content can help out. If you're selling digital products or something more high end, like maybe you are a travel blogger and you're selling like a package of a trip for like a family of 4, and it's, $10,000 or something like that, you may need to build a lot more trust because it's a lot more money. It's a bigger thing than just ordering something that costs like $80 on Amazon, right? So in the case where you want to have a higher level of trust, you want to have more contact, and that contact can be via a podcast or YouTube where you really can build a lot more trust. All right. And I'm gonna pop back to the post. By the way, be sure to take a look every now and then at the community tab. I don't post there too often, but I appreciate the people that did pop in and leave a comment. So I'm just gonna read the couple more here. So Casey says, not all niche sites. He says, I have launched several in the past year that are doing better than ever. I would say niche sites are overly crowded, and I would say niche sites and overly crowded niches will generally struggle. So here is a positive aspect. And one thing that I do observe is like many things, right? If people have more experience, they will tend to have like a higher success rate because they make fewer mistakes because they made those mistakes before. Marcus says, from an SEO perspective, it's maybe harder, but there seems to be opportunities. However, I think it's important to diversify marketing efforts besides SEO. You could build a community, a newsletter, YouTube, and this will also help become an authority. And SEO is not the only way. So perfectly stated. And it started off, fairly harsh with, niche sites are dead and all that kind of stuff, where a lot of people have gotten hit. And I do want to point out again, I do have a couple interviews where I talk to people that have lost the majority of their traffic, what they're trying to do to recover it, and just the story. It's actually been hard, right? I hear a lot of stories out there of people that have lost a lot of traffic. They don't want to talk about it too much. And I hear it from all the emails that I'm getting and the general chatter, like a lot of sites were hit really bad. So it's been important, and it is important for me to like share those stories because that's the reality. And I think some other shows, some other creators, like they have a vested interest in continuing to only share the success stories, which is good to be inspiring. But the other aspect is the reality and the fact that there's an existing audience, there's existing niche site owners that are kind of wondering, like, what are we supposed to do? And, we can say, try to improve your old content and make sure you're using unique images and all this stuff. And it may or may not help in 6 days or 6 weeks or 6 months, or it might not help at all. And that's the thing, like there's a lot of advice being given, and it's not bad advice, but it doesn't guarantee like your site's going to recover. And the fact is, like, even very competent SEOs like don't know exactly what to do. And I'm more of a marketer than a pure SEO. And I realized that a long time ago. You start talking with like people that work with multiple clients and they're doing a lot of different things and they're solving a lot more complex problems that, I have some SEO knowledge, but there are real SEO pros out there. And I try to interview those folks. Okay, let's get back to the chat here. And then we'll transition into, how you could take the skills that you have learned from niche sites and transfer them to another area. And I would love it in the chat, because it'll take me a few minutes to catch up on the chat. If you can write the skills that you personally have developed while working on niche sites or watching some of the related content out there. And then we could use those specifically and talk about how you could use those skills elsewhere. And David said, I thought the same thing from the email. I'm assuming you mean Jay, and I'm not sure, but I won't call anyone out specifically, but I don't know. Send me an email, David. I'll tell you offline. All right. Oh, Jonathan has a great comment here. So Tony Hill is doing a public project that is a new site just focusing on Pinterest traffic and doesn't care what Google does. It should be interesting. And I think that is interesting, where you're like taking a business model and testing it out and seeing like what's going to happen. I'm doing something similar, although I'm not sure when I'll communicate it exactly, but I have talked about like the new podcast that I'm starting. And I think I'm going to target like the very end of February or early March to launch it, but it will be focused on SEO. Funny enough, even though I'm trashing the SEO business model in our little area of our little niche of how we implement it. But SEO is a very big deal, obviously, still. And there's a whole giant, huge industry around it. And my show will be focusing on the more advanced topics. I will have to have sort of like a delineation between the Doug show and the new show. But luckily, my network does support interviewing and talking to very advanced SEO experts and agency owners and high level SEO folks. And this public business model, or public project, is starting a podcast and then attempting to sell it, which generally, to my knowledge, has not been done. So if someone does start a profitable show, they usually want to hang on to it, because it's pretty hard to start a show and get people to listen. But I guess I'm crazy enough to give it a shot and think that it might be possible, which I think we all have to do a little bit, right? So you have to be smart enough to execute the plan and driven enough to execute the plan, but you have to be crazy enough, you have to be delusional enough and dumb enough to try it and think it might work. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how that goes. And the cool part, I think, with Tony's project that you mentioned there, Jonathan, is he's ignoring the Google traffic, which right now seems to be extremely volatile. And it's hard to count on that. And this is where it's really, it's so devastating if someone has been earning money from their site for, years, and then all of a sudden they've lost like 75% of their traffic and 75% of their revenue, and they really don't have anywhere to go with it. All right, and Susan likes my 4.5 answer. Yeah, so it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good overall. Susan also says, I wonder how much Quora or Reddit dominate in foreign niches. Oh, good question. No clue. I haven't looked too much. All right, Jack says, Speaking of transferable skills, I've learned a lot about web design while building my sites. It's allowed me to pivot careers for my day job while building my niche sites on the side. So perfect. All right, let's transition into the more important part. So you've developed these skills. Feel free, folks, in the chat to list more. And if you're watching the replay later, please leave a comment. That helps out a lot if you leave a comment. You could say anything in there. It doesn't really matter. Any comment helps. So there are several things that you can do if you know how to create a niche site. We'll hit some of the basics here. And actually, I think I created some notes, but high level, right? If you know how to create a niche site, let's say, actually, yeah, let's lay out a baseline level of competency, right? So let's say you started a site, you found some keywords, you published some content, and you got some traffic. You don't even need to have earned any money, but if you earned, say, $20 to $100, like that kind of proves that you can earn money online. So you've reached that mental competency level where you believe, you know that you can do it because you've done it before. So baseline is you started a site, you got a little traffic, maybe you earned a little bit of money. So there's a couple things right off the bat. And Jack mentions it here. Website. People still need websites. And I was chatting with a friend not too long ago, and he built and sold several sites. He sold one for seven figures, like low seven figures, I guess. So over $1 million, right? Pretty good chunk of change. And he was kind of just going back to his roots. And he was like, you know what? I really like building websites. And he was going to start an agency where he just built websites for small businesses. And the fact is, the restaurant owner out there that just opened their restaurant, they need to focus on running the business and cooking the food and keeping the staff happy and the restaurant filled, right? They don't want to spend their time updating their website and making sure the plugins are up to date and all that kind of stuff, right? They need to focus on running the business. And it could be plumbers or like the handyman or a photographer or whatever, like fill in the blank. A lot of people, a lot of small businesses specifically need websites, and they're relatively straightforward. In fact, if you go search success stories for, podcast in this sort of space, you'll find it was very popular a few years ago. I remember hearing a bunch of these stories where someone just decided that they wanted to build websites for restaurants. I think it was restaurants specifically. So they had a WordPress theme that, like, basically they could plug and play. They did no customization, right? I think they started doing customization, but then they systematized the whole thing and they had a template that they used. And it was very easy for them to get the information from the restaurant owner, build the website, and then do monthly maintenance or whatever they needed to do, right? And they grew the business like crazy, right? And at some point, it's about networking and knowing a handful of people that will refer you, word of mouth. Maybe you show up to some conferences that are relevant to the industry. And it doesn't have to be restaurants, right? That was just the example that I happen to remember, but any small business. So maybe it's like real estate agents or wedding photographers, blah, 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 right? There's a million different businesses that you could focus on. And all you have to do is niche it down enough where you can target that audience really well. So that's just building websites. Another big thing is just content in general. So if you've published content online, you have a skill and you can go out there and approach, I mean, really, you could approach a business that has a blog and you're like, hey, you potentially can get more leads if you publish this kind of content. It might not be as valuable unless you stack it on top of another skill, which hopefully in the last year you have played around with AI tools in some capacity. So it's just the reality of what we're dealing with now. And until AI became like a viable tool that was helpful, I called it out as being unhelpful. And there were many years, well, maybe like two years where I was like, Jasper is not that good. And then it got better. And then we got ChatGPT. So there was really only like, it was maybe like a 6-month period where Jasper was like kind of useful, but not that great. And then ChatGPT came out in, was it late 2022, and that really, like, that changed everything, and it's just sort of accelerated since then. So now there's plenty of tools where you can not necessarily write content, but you can do a ton of research. You can get maybe your first draft or so out of an AI tool and then spruce it up a bit. However, if you take the content skill and the AI skill, and let's say you wanted to be a podcast producer, you probably could do a really good job of doing research, creating an outline for the host. And maybe it's, I mean, there's a ton of podcasts out there, right? So that potentially is a good route. I was going to say you could be like a radio producer with that sort of information, right? You could put in your main references, your main sources, which maybe they're journal articles, maybe they're professionally written essays, and you can put this content into one of the AI tools and say, hey, here's a bunch of source info. Give me an outline where we talk about this general narrative, and it's for a podcast, and we're going to interview someone, and give me a handful of questions to interview that person too. So all of a sudden, you've done a whole lot of research, and instead of staring at a blank screen and a cursor blinking at you, you have like a one pager of an outline, a handful of questions, and then all you need to do is get rid of the shit that doesn't make sense, and then you could pepper in a handful of things to make it a little more unique. And if it is a podcast interview or a discussion of some kind, the actual content is going to come from the discussion. So it's just aiding the discussion. The research is really helpful, but you don't have to worry about the discussion being too derivative of other content, because it's not like you're reading it verbatim. You're having a conversation or a discussion about it. All right. And Jonathan says, SEO Jesus says there's a possible correction of Reddit dominance being observed as we speak in the SERPs. All right. See, and that's the other thing is, like, this actually makes the point, right? um, so the fact that we went from, was it around September when the helpful content update moved a lot of Reddit results up? There's been so many updates, I mixed it up. But here we are in the middle of January, and some people lost like 90% of their revenue. And to me, that is bananas, right? So even if Google corrects this, and we'll call it a correction, if Google shuffles it around, right? Like, I'm not here to tell them how to run their business or the SERPs or whatever. But the fact that we could have that much volatility and have it last for like a few months, that's crazy to me. That's very crazy to me. So it would be great, because I hate Reddit results. I think those are some of the most nonsense answers that are useless that I've seen. Right? I'd rather have. I think I'd generally rather have an AI piece of content that was edited than have to go through the morons at Reddit. Who like, I don't know, maybe it's the stuff that I research. But yeah, Reddit results are not that great. Maybe I'm too harsh. All right. Oh, Marcus made it on. We read your comment earlier. I thought it was good and spot on. Okay. So we talked about building websites. We talked about content. This is more of a specific little area, but if you installed WordPress, you started working using WordPress, you may have gotten into a little coding. And this could be very valuable again, especially when you couple it with AI. Even if you didn't have a coding background, if you didn't write code in the past, there's so many resources now. You could watch YouTube channels. There's like free Code Academy kind of stuff where you can go sign up and learn how to code, like in whatever language you want, right? If you can take those skills, and even if you only know a little bit, if you can work with people on their sites, you essentially could be a WordPress developer. Now, I would say make sure you know what you're doing. Like, don't take someone's site and potentially damage it without, having a backup and know what you're doing. Make sure you're competent. But the fact is, like, you could figure out how to do a ton on your own. And that potentially is one of the most common questions I get from experienced folks. Doug, do you have a WordPress developer that you like to use? And my answer is always no. I don't know anyone. I usually just use like the plain vanilla stuff. I don't want to customize anything. I have no developer to recommend. And if you have those skills, you could be the go-to person for a lot of people. It's so cool what you can do with the AI tools now, as far as getting help with code or debugging and that sort of thing. And it's even crazier to me because I have a computer engineering degree. So I took a lot of programming classes a long time ago, like 20 years ago. And number one, I hardly use it now. But the thing is, the stuff that we were coding was pretty tough. Like, it was hard to do. Really fun though. I actually enjoy coding a lot. I enjoy debugging because you could just very slowly like fix the problem. And I was very good at getting into the details, debugging and testing and figuring out the problems. And with the tools nowadays, like, you can probably debug much faster than whatever I just described. And I remember one of my early co-op jobs, and you had to code things out. You had to compile the code. You had to load it on to, it was Unix. You had to load it on to an access node. It was a telecom that I was in. You had to load it on there. Very old computer, very old system, and then reboot it, which would take like 2 hours or something like that. So to test one little change, it would take like 3 hours to set it up. And then you would hit like execute and like make a test call, and then it would do something, and then you could see like where it failed. But it would take forever to like get to that point. And I think now, to be fair, I haven't done any debugging like that with ChatGPT or similar tools, but I'm pretty sure they would be much faster. You wouldn't have to go through the whole reboot process, most likely. So, all right, so we hit the coding aspect. The other thing, just jumping back up to a higher level, is SEO, right? So we usually think about Google, but there's search engines all over the place. And if you just have that idea of SEO, knowing that you need to think about the title, and you need to think about the content, and you need to think about what people are searching for, that applies to anywhere where people search, like YouTube, for example, or maybe Where else do people search? Pinterest, Amazon, anywhere there's like a search bar, right? People are searching there, and you might be able to use those skills to help a business out and be essentially a freelancer to help people out with that. The other thing, again, you probably played with some of the AI tools, image generation specifically, so you could focus on sort of graphics and original images. And I've been playing around with Midjourney quite a bit. It's pretty cool. There's new like the acceleration is pretty impressive. So there's been new releases over the past year. There's more capabilities within ChatGPT, which is really cool. They have plugins that you could use, and they have, what is the area called? It is the Explore GPT area, and there's some are created by individuals, some are created by companies, and there's a handful that are like by ChatGPT, and you have like Dolly in there. There's a data analyst. There's creative writing coach. Let me share my screen here. I think I could do that. That is the wrong one. I'm trying to drag the window over. Sorry, folks. So here are the GPTs. And there's a bunch. There are, they have the trending section. You have a logo creator, grimoire, image generation. Oh, here are the ones by ChatGPT. So it's like Dolly, data analyst, creative writing coach, hot mods. Let's modify your image into something really wild. That's interesting. And a bunch of others, right? There's a handful of others. The other thing, the big thing, right? You could use the web browser, and it can browse the web to help you gather information or conduct research. So there's a bunch of things that you can do. And one of them is, image creation, image generation, that sort of thing. I will tell you, I get a ton of emails from people that want to edit my videos or turn my videos into shorts, or they go to my YouTube channel and they were like, you're doing everything wrong. You need to do this and do that, and you'll get more views. And generally, I mean, there's some stuff that I can't do for sure, but generally they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So I would say be cautious. Don't waste a bunch of time emailing everyone in the world, because I know what they're doing. They're going to grab my email address. They're looking at people that have like, over 30,000 subscribers or something. And they're like, hey, we know what we're doing. We can do X, Y, and Z. And they're like, put tags on your videos and your thumbnails suck and blah, blah, blah. And they have no actual track record. Like, they have no data supporting what they're talking about. It doesn't mean I don't think I can improve. It's just I'm picking the things that I'm focusing on. And honestly, I know the biggest thing would be like spending more time on the content. Live streams, horrible for growing your channel. Generally, horrible. I spend most time on these. What about interviews, especially long ones? Horrible for growing your channel, especially in this space. All right, I'm going to hop back to the chat here. Grav says, I joined late. What do you think of the future of SEO? Can someone make a career out of SEO? Sure, you can make a career out of SEO. I think there's still going to be a lot of business need for SEOs for sure. In fact, I mentioned it earlier, I'm starting like a new SEO podcast for SEO pros. And Marcus says, in the Netherlands, quite a lot of programmers and IT employees are losing jobs because of AI already. It's crazy how fast things can change. Yeah, for sure. I agree 100%. And I think I think the content industry is or has experienced this, right? I think a lot of people have seen just content creators like us, people that have blogs, instead of getting 20 articles a month from an agency, they figured out that they can get just as good a content, maybe better, from an AI tool. And that's completely different than it was about even 1 year ago. I don't think the content coming out of ChatGPT 3.5, I don't think it was as good as what we can get now from GPT-4, Claude. There's a handful of other tools also. And by the way, I don't, whenever a new tool comes out, like, I'm not testing it. I was chatting with someone the other day, and number one, I don't care enough to learn every tool. And I get emails from a lot of people, and they're like, hey, I created a new tool. Do you want to check it out? And it's like version 1. And number one, like, it's like me trying to find a problem that they have the solution for, but I'm like, I don't have that problem. So I don't care. I don't care. And they're like, oh, you could be an affiliate and you can earn money. Also, I don't care. I don't want to be your tester and figure out what's wrong with your tool and tell you how to improve it. Like, figure it out yourself. Like, come to me when you have version 3 done, and then maybe I'll look at it. But I'm pretty sure if I don't have that problem, or if I've already solved the problem, then I don't want to find a new solution. I don't care that much. And it lifts a lot of the stress away, because I think, and I know some of my, some people that I've talked to, they're like, oh yeah, like I tested out this tool, like I was testing out all these things. Sometimes they're trying to solve a problem that they have, and like researching the tool helps them because they have a problem that they need to solve, and the tool helps that. So they test a bunch of them. Sometimes people learn something that they don't need yet, but they might need in the future. And that's where a lot of time can be wasted. So look out for that. All right. So a lot of the stuff that I mentioned was around just setting up websites, maybe some coding for WordPress. You might be able to create a plugin for someone, right? Maybe a plugin that solves a specific problem for someone, and then if you retain the ownership of that, the copyright for that, you could potentially market that plugin, right? There are plugins that can save people a lot of time. Maybe things that are already done, but you could do it in a little bit of a better way. In fact, you don't necessarily have to come up with like a brand new idea. You just need to potentially come up with a better solution than someone else. Or you could take a solution that does work in one area and then take it to a different place where it has not yet been implemented. So let me think of an example here. A little bit of a stretch, but you come along with me, and then you'll be able to come up with your own analogy. And it probably won't be something that like I tell you. It'll be something you come up with because you know where this could be effective. So quick example, let's say, let's pick a business, right? So we'll say real estate agents. Real estate agents have their normal marketing, but let's say you know something that could work pretty well that hasn't been done in the real estate market. Let's say it is, I don't know if this will work, by the way, all right? So you have to test it. But let's say it is around like long tail keywords related to the cost of living in Ohio or something like that. And the fact is, like, you know, the SEO portion, you know, the content, and you potentially could help out real estate agents in a specific geography, right? just because you understand what people might be searching for and if those people are good leads for the real estate agent. So you could take something that you know works elsewhere, and in this case, it's generally a content site, and the content and the keyword approach and all that kind of stuff, and you're just applying it to a different business where it hasn't been done before. And you could find a lot of examples of this again if you listen to podcasts that focus on entrepreneurship. A lot of times you'll see a business model that works pretty well, and then you just move it somewhere else to a different industry. And I thought of a specific example. So, and I'll sort of genericize it too, but let's say it's a moving company, right? So sometimes moving companies are not high tech, and it's a little bit difficult to schedule with them, and they don't have a good infrastructure or a tech stack to help people schedule online. So what you might be able to do is take a scheduling platform that works pretty well. Maybe it's just like a Google Calendar situation, and you take that and add that efficiency to a moving company, right? So all the things that you know from niche sites and SEO and content and keyword research and the AI tools and the new capabilities of the AI tools. Because if you're watching this, you probably check out other channels and you check out other content related to the new developments in AI. In the general population, the business owner that is running that moving company, they're not in the weeds like that. They're trying to make sure their people come in on time and stuff. So if you could take that solution and help them out, it can change their business, right? It can completely change their business. And the cool part is if you figure out the right target audience, the right business that can really benefit from that, then you can scale it out, right? There's moving companies in every state. There's, hundreds of them per state. There's many tens of thousands, right? You just focus on like one little market and then take that efficiency, and then you could scale it and apply it in a pretty simple way. It won't necessarily be easy, but those are the kind of things you have to think about. So you have these set of skills, and all you really need to do is just figure out how to take one of those micro skills, stack it on some other thing that you know how to do, and then take it somewhere else. Maybe you have a specific contact in an industry and you're like, oh, this could really work well. So I'm not going to ramble on. Any other thoughts out there before we wrap it up for the day? And Marcus says, I was thinking of doing some sort of an SEO internship to become an SEO consultant, but due to all the big changes lately, I'm not sure about that anymore. A well-paid internship like the normal job, but learning at the same time. And the thing is, I think there still will be an SEO industry. I think it'll be different for people that are trying to do stuff on the side, specifically these affiliate sites, right? So yeah, specifically these affiliate sites in the way that we have been building them for the last 10 years, it's slowly taking a little bit longer. But the thing is, you still can look through the SERPs, and even though we have a lot of user-generated content ranking high currently, there are still blogs and websites that rank high, and sometimes they are younger sites. And that's the weird thing, right? So we talk about quality content. Google says publish quality content, which is good, right? Like at the end of the day, like you do want to do that. You want to have original images. You want to have like firsthand experience. Like all that stuff is good, right? Like we complain about it a little bit and the rules change and all that, but like at the end of the day, that's better content, right? Like when someone takes a picture on their phone and we know they had the product and they used it, that's better. Like we have a lot more trust and can believe in that more than just, a fake image created on Mid-Journey and it doesn't quite look right because like the hand has like 4 thumbs on there or something like that. But at the end of the day, there still will be corporate websites or generally websites out there that will have readers, and it just depends on like what your expectations are and if you're relying on a site for your sole source of income. That's where it gets scary. That's where it gets really scary. All right, that's it for today. Make sure you're on the email list if you want to learn a little bit more, or if you want to make sure you are aware whenever I do live streams. Typically they are on Tuesdays, but I needed to move it to Thursday. So that's it for today. Thanks everyone for popping on. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit subscribe, all that stuff. It helps out the channel quite a bit. That's one of the best things that you can do. And I think that's it. So we'll catch y'all next week.